Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV. This is the very first episode of the EFL London Roundup. I'm your host, George Dagless. I'll be with you every single Thursday. And with me this week are Ned Holmes and Billy Mulley. Ned, how you getting on?
Yeah, good, thanks, George.
Cool. And Billy, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Nice one. Well, thanks for joining us, you two, and hopefully there's a fair few people watching us as well. It's the EFL London Roundup show, so obviously we'll be talking about all the Capitals clubs in the EFL. We've got 7 to cover, and given it's the first show, we're going to try and cram them all in the next 20 minutes. So without further ado, we'll get going and kick off with Fulham. So it's been a good start to the season for Fulham. Obviously back in the Championship after the relegation from the Premier League. A really good start under Marco Silva, and one of the standout names obviously being Fabio Carvalho, the youngster. Really a burst on the scene, a player that's sort of followed in the footsteps of the likes of Ryan Sessegnon, who's obviously gone on to Spurs. The plan for Fulham obviously is to try and keep Carvalho on board. They've offered him a contract earlier this summer, one that unfortunately didn't get signed, but an exclusive line that's come to us earlier on today is that Carvalho, Fulham are confident of getting Carvalho onto a new contract, and they're hoping that, given that he's into the first team now and should be involved more this season in first team matters, that the fresher terms they're going to offer him should reflect that, and he will put pen to paper, and obviously they will hope spur them on to a promotion push this season. Ned, come to you first of all on Carvalho. How impressed have you been with him, and how important will it be that he does sign a new deal with Fulham?
I mean, I've been surprised how much faith has been put in Marco Silva. I know he featured a lot in pre-season, he impressed a lot, but I didn't think once they sort of had their full attacking weapons back, he'd be such a key player. I mean, I think his ball carrying skills and his sort of quick feet are so impressive, but it's really that it's the threat he offers around the box that makes him so dangerous. I think so often you see sort of like the teenagers that break through, pick up those dangerous positions, but sort of not consistently have that killer ball or that killer finish. And I think it's 3 goals and an assist for him now, and he just seems to be churning out chances for them. So he looks like a big player, and that news that's come to us today is obviously massive for Fulham, because losing a young player like that, the sky really does seem to be the limit for him. So if they can get sort of that wrapped up, that'd be a massive boost for them. And you do feel that once the window closes and that there isn't that option of sort of leaving straight away, it'll probably be easier to sort of tie him up to a new deal.
Yeah, I mean, 3 goals and 1 assist so far for Carvalho in the league. Billy, so what have you made of his start, and how good do you think he'll become? Obviously, it's very early days in his career, but it seems as though the sky's the limit really for him at the moment.
Yeah, as you say, 3 goals and an assist already is brilliant for any teenager, and the fact that he's so influential as well in everything else they do is just really exciting times for Fulham fans. I think I've been particularly impressed with how mature he looks. You wouldn't think as a teenager by his performances so far, and as Ned says, his ability on the ball and it's mainly his attacking runs into space and sort of having that attack intelligence that is usually not found within 19-year-olds, and it's really exciting for Fulham, and he'll be a big player this season.
Yeah, so that's Fulham confident that Fabio Carvalho will sign a new contract in the near future. Another line that's coming to us concerns that Phil Jones at Manchester United. Now, obviously, this is the London show, so we won't talk about the Old Trafford club too much, but the line is that he's willing now to consider championship offers, and the rumours are, among other clubs, that Fulham are interested. Now, this links to another story that's come to us today, that Wolves are interested in signing Tosin. They've made an approach to Fulham late in the window, sounding out how available Tosin might be for a move from the Cottage to Molineux. So Ned, we'll come to you with this one. Kind of 2 dynamics really to the question I'm going to give you. First of all, would Phil Jones be a good signing for Fulham? And potentially, if Tosin does leave, is he the kind of player that could replace potentially Wolves-bound defender?
I think it's an interesting one with Phil Jones in that, that quality is obviously there. We've seen him be a quality defender for United and for England, but it's been a long time now since he's played regular football. So there's got to be question marks about really, his injury record is one, but also whether he still does have that quality to be able to produce week in, week out. It's obviously good news that he's willing to make that drop down, but you can't imagine it's going to be a cheap deal. And I think if Tosin doesn't go with some of the players they've got in there already, like Ream, Mawson and Michael Hector coming back now after sort of returning late from international duty, I'm not really sure he's a player they need to go after. It obviously completely changes if Tosin goes. I see him really as one of the 2 or 3 best centre-backs in the Championship at the moment, the start he's made. And, I would like to think that they'd look to strengthen that area should he leave, because the likes of Ream and, well, particularly Mawson, you've got to question how much you can get out of him over a season. So a bit more cover would go well if Tosin goes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're told, the Wolves have obviously made an approach to Tosin, but Fulham are naturally, with a few days left in the window, very keen to keep hold of him. Obviously, that £10 million release clause that was in his contract expired earlier this summer at the start of the Championship season, so Fulham can sort of put whatever price they like really on him. So we'll have to see if Wolves are successful in their late approach. I've got a feeling they might not be, but we'll see what happens in the coming days. Right, we'll move away from Fulham and go to their West London neighbours, QPR. And we start with Rangers and 2 of their more defensive players, although one of them has actually been very good going forwards, and it's Rob Dickie. Ned, you've seen QPR a fair bit already this season, and you were there for the EFL Cup game against Oxford United earlier this week, where Dickie scored another stunner. How good, first of all, do you think the centre-half's been for QPR? Is he one of the Championship's best defenders?
Yeah, absolutely. I put him in that top bracket with Tosin, who we were talking about a little earlier. He's marshalled that defensive line so well, and he's been so solid. He's almost dominated opposition attackers every time I've seen him. And then you add into that, the way he brings the ball forward, and that goal he scored, which I'm sure everyone's seen on Tuesday night, was a wonderful strike. But sort of the peace of mind, not peace of mind, the sort of thought to chest it down and take it away from the attacker before playing the 1-2. I think he's a really wonderful player. Carl Robinson, after the game, obviously former manager of his, was really waxing lyrical about him, sort of calling him the best defender in the Championship, and I don't disagree with him at all.
Now, Dickie's obviously been linked away over the course of this transfer window. QPR have done really well to keep hold of him. And another player that we'll come to as well, Seny Dieng, he's now getting linked away as well towards the end of the window with a move to Sheffield United, who of course just lost Aaron Ramsdale to Arsenal. In his press conference, and quoted by West London Sport, Mark Warburton has said ahead of this weekend that given we're right at the end of the window, the ball's very much in QPR's court. They can kind of command whatever fee they want, and naturally the value of Dieng and Dickie will increase in these closing days of the window, given that it would give QPR hardly any time to replace them. Billy, do you think that's a fair call from Mark Warburton? And given the importance that the 2 have to QPR's team, how much could you see them potentially sort of going for if they did end up leaving at the end of the window?
I think, as he says, it will take a lot of money to prize them away at this point of the transfer window. I think particularly going back to Dickie, he was so influential last season. He started in the same vein this year, and to lose someone like that this late on is difficult to say that he's irreplaceable, but he's moving on to that bracket with his performances so far. And Dieng as well, I think he finished runner-up in the club's end of season awards last year, and to lose both of them would be a big blow, because along with Johansson, those are probably the 3 biggest players they've got at the club at the moment. And if they are to mount a serious promotion push, I think all 3 players need to be consistently playing. We have Jordan Archer, that he's a competent enough Championship goalkeeper, but what Dieng brought last season is something that's definitely worth keeping hold of, and it would take a lot of money, I think, to take any of them away from QPR.
Yeah, it would be a real surprise to see them leave now towards the end of this window, and yeah, it would take a hell of a lot of money, you'd imagine, to upset Rangers' promotion aims for the coming rest of the campaign. Right, we'll leave QPR and we'll head to South London and Millwall. So for the Lions so far this season, it's been a little bit tougher than they would have liked. They've been close in a few games, but probably haven't got the points on the board that they would have wanted. A little bit of a defensive injury crisis hit them as well. Gary Rowett has gone on record earlier this week and said that Millwall are looking for a new defensive addition for the transfer deadline. Sean Hutchinson, Danny McNamara picked up 6-week-long injuries apiece, and Ryan Leonard is also out maybe for a couple of weeks, whilst Marlon Romeo missed the EFL Cup game against Cambridge United earlier this week. Ned, we'll come to you. You've seen Millwall as well early on this season. I think, personally, for me, before this injury news sort of hit them, they potentially more needed another attacking signing before the end of the transfer deadline. Now Rowett's looking at potentially a defensive addition. Can you see them maybe getting both, or perhaps he needs to prioritise looking at a defender now over an attacker?
I mean, I would have sort of agreed with you in terms of the attacking signing, but perhaps, you know, Benny Kofobe's sort of, I think it's 2 goals and 4 for him now in the Championship. He looks to sort of be finding his feet, and that could be massive for them, really. I mean, they've for so long, I think, lacked a consistent goal-scoring striker that's going to, you know, score week in, week out, and take a bit of that pressure off Jed Wallace. Last season, it was a case of, you know, too many draws, too many games that they were close in, and they couldn't find that killer flow. And unfortunately, you know, it seems like they've had that issue at times this season. You know, the loss of Hutchinson in particular, massive. And in that sense, it does make sense for me for them to look to sort of bring in that defensive signing. But I think it's also worth remembering with Millwall that it has been a tough start. You know, QPR away, Cardiff, you know, Fulham. But those are all teams that are going to be up there and challenging, and they haven't quite got out of first gear yet. And you would hope that maybe with 1 or hopefully 2 additions, they could sort of get some points on the board and really get going over the next month or so.
You'd still expect them to, you know, have playoff aspirations this season, as you mentioned. They're still very early on in the campaign. Billy, what have you made of Millwall's start?
Yeah, it's obviously been difficult, as Ned says. It's been games against difficult opposition who we all expect to be up there come the end of the season. And the latest sort of coming from Rowett that there needs to be a defensive addition. You can see that with the way that they operate with the 3 at the back. Hutchinson's injured now. They're quite thin as it is, and they perhaps need someone that's got that experience at Championship or even higher level. They've got Daniel Ballard, who's obviously a very athletic, very competent defender. He's a very good defender, as seen at Blackpool last year. But at the same time, they need to add that experience. They've got Jake Cooper on the other side, who's again a very good central defender. But adding experience in the absence of Hutchinson is what they need to do. I think better days will come for Millwall, as we've continued to say here. That the start has been difficult, and it's now about putting a run together and starting to slowly creep back into the form they were in last season.
Yeah, we'll see how Rowett goes in the final days of the window as he tries to get in that defensive addition. Right, let's move from Millwall to their South London rivals, Charlton Athletic. Now, similarly to the Lions, the Addicts have had a little bit of a slow start as well in Sky Bet League One. For many, they were one of the promotion favourites. Obviously, Nigel Atkins and Sandgard have made plenty of noise about some of the summer signings they were going to make, but so far the window has perhaps been a little bit underwhelming. They've made some signings, but it does seem as though they want to be very active in the closing days of the transfer window. Ned, come to you first of all. Carl Dempsey is a player that's been linked to Charlton earlier this week. Football Insider reported that Charlton have seen a £200,000 bid rejected for the Gills player. Is he the sort of midfield sign that the Addicts need to make before the deadline?
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of a bit of an all-action midfielder, and someone that could spark a bit of life into that sort of midfield three, which I think, you know, as a lot of the sort of Valley faithful have been saying, has been a little bit limp and a little bit lifeless through the first few weeks of the season. You know, I think it was 8 goals, 4 assists last season. You know, he's obviously a proven player. at League One level, and I think he's a player that's worth a lot more than the sort of 200,000 that it's been reported they bid for him. So, I think Charlton fans should expect another bid a lot higher than that, because he's exactly the sort of player they should be pulling in. And if they don't see that, I think supporters can be pretty frustrated with Thomas Sandgaard, really, because he talked the talk and he promised a lot. And I don't think they've had quite the sort of window that a lot of other clubs vying for promotion has. And at the moment, it seems a lot of the unrest at Charlton, if we would call it that, is focused on Adkins, and I think that's a little unfair.
Yeah, obviously there's still a few days left in the window, but as you say, there was plenty of talk about it being a very big market for Charlton as they look to set up a League One promotion challenge. You'd have to say at the moment that squad does look undercooked and a bit thin on the ground. Obviously, players like Jake Forster-Caskey need to come back, and he'll be very important. But it just seems as though the Addicts need a little bit more depth. For you, Billy, what have you made of Charlton so far? Would you still stand by the suggestion that many have made that they are one of the promotion contenders, or do you think perhaps they're already losing too much ground in that particular race?
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to rule them out as of yet. They've obviously made not the best of starts, but it's very early in the season. We're 4 games in, and similar to Millwall, they've played a few teams that are expected to be up there come the end of the season. I think looking at Blackpool of last season, they started quite slowly, and once things kicked into gear, they were unstoppable and very much deserved their promotion to the Championship. And even looking upper division, Barnsley and Brentford both started quite poorly, and what Barnsley went on to do was incredible, and Brentford as well, getting promotion to the Premier League is some achievement. So I think it's unfair to rule them out as of yet, but at the same time, it's when this first win will come, and if it keeps going on into September, then there's a case for worrying.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they get on into September, and obviously a big few days at the Valley potentially with what they will hope will be a lot of incomings arriving in SE7. Right, we'll move away from Charlton and we'll talk about the final League One London club, and that's AFC Wimbledon. And it's been a pretty positive start, I would say, for the Dons this year in League One. Obviously, fans back in Plough Lane, eagerly awaited. Really excited about that. It's obviously good to see, and it seems like Mark Robinson is bringing in a playing style that fans are enjoying as well. They've got the youngest team in the EFL, and speaking to Chris Thorpe, our resident Wimbledon fan of Football League World, yesterday, he seemed very, very pleased with what Robinson's doing, the approach that Wimbledon are sending out on the pitch. Ned, what have you made so far of AFC Wimbledon? It seems as though there's just been a real sort of uplifting mood at the start of this season. Obviously, it was a little bit tough at times last year. Eventually, that they avoided the drop, and obviously now Robinson's really starting to get his teeth into that Wimbledon team and get his style across. And it looks as though maybe a little bit of momentum's building.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely right. You say it's been a really positive start of the season, and there seems to be a real good feeling around the club that the return of fans and that excitement seems to be feeding into the performances on the pitch. And really, overall, I think if you're a Dons fan, there's just a huge amount to be positive about. They're perhaps not in. I think League One this year is probably about as tight and as congested in terms of playoff hopefuls as we've seen in a long time. And I don't think they're in that bracket. But, I think the important thing after surviving last season was always going to be making progress. And I think it's early days, obviously, but in the first few weeks of the season, I think we can clearly see the progress is being made, both in the performances and just the feeling around the club, really.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Billy, what have you made of Wimbledon start so far this year? I mean, myself and Ned have been pretty impressed with it, but have you?
Yeah, I make it clear that I'm impressed with Wimbledon so far. I think when there's been a clear sort of recruitment drive of younger, talented players from sort of the Premier League and Championship as well. And at first, it seemed that they recruited a few too many. There was a bit of a lack of experience, but the way they've started and the way they've settled into the division is really exciting to see. Of course, they have added a bit of experience in Darius Charles, but overall, I think it's a very good start in a very competitive League One season.
Yep, we will see how Wimbledon get on, but it certainly does seem exciting times for them as they obviously get into that era of being back at Plough Lane with fans backing out the stadium. Right, we'll drop into League Two and discuss Leyton Orient. Now, Orient obviously have Kenny Jackett in charge, formerly at Portsmouth, obviously won promotion at several different clubs he's been at in the EFL, up and down the leagues. So naturally, there's excitement around the O's this season and what they could potentially achieve under Jackett's stewardship. It's been a fairly steady start so far in League Two, 1 win, 2 draws and a loss. Ned, you've actually seen Leyton Orient as well earlier on this season in the Carvalho Cup when they played QPR. What did you make of them in that particular game, and what have you made of their start so far in the fourth tier?
I think in the start of the first full season in the Jackett era really is the sort of belief and determination that he seems to have instilled in the squad. You know, they in the Carabao Cup game, I'd say they were dominated in the first 45 minutes by QPR, but they came out after the half, and honestly in the second half they were the better team. Had it not been for Jordan Archer producing some really impressive saves, I think they would have won that. And I think, we talked about positivity at Wimbledon, and I think we could say the same at Leyton Orient. There seems to be, there's a lot to like there with what Kenny Jackett's doing. And the one concern I would really have is the goals. I'm not sure whether Drinnan, he's a hard worker. I'm not sure whether he's going to score hatfuls of goals. Harry Smith, similar. The likes of Satiru and I think it's Omotoy from Norwich. They're both young players, and we haven't seen whether really they can score week in, week out. So I'd say, that they need to find some consistent goals, and I'm not convinced, that they have enough at the moment to say that they're going to be pushing.
Yeah, good point you make, Ned. Obviously, Jack is in charge, Billy. Didn't end at Portsmouth how he would have liked. They, tried so hard for promotion from League One for several seasons on the bounce. Never paid off, obviously. How hungry do you expect him to be at Orient to sort of not prove the doubters wrong, because he's obviously done it before, but get in there and really show that he's still a manager that can obviously deliver promotion.
Yeah, because as you say, at Portsmouth, he had difficulties sort of coming to the end of the seasons. It wasn't entirely his fault at times. Obviously, being a Portsmouth manager, it comes with high expectations. But I still think he's a brilliant manager at sort of League One, League Two level, and I think he's got every chance this year of taking Leyton Orient up. They've recruited well in my eyes in terms of the two Smiths, Paul Smith and Harry Smith. I know Ned said about Harry Smith perhaps not being the goal scorer that they need at this point, but he definitely, dropping down a division as well at Northampton last year, I think he needs a goal and then he can build his confidence from there. Paul Smith, we've seen it before, how much of an attacking threat he can be, and now he's at League Two level. I think he'll shine, and I think there's definitely a reason to be excited around this Leyton Orient side, and as it's been a steady start, and I'm sure that come the end of the season they'll be there or thereabouts.
Yep, there's plenty of hope around the O's at the moment, so we'll have to see how the season unfolds for them. And we get to our final London club on this EFL roundup, where there's plenty of optimism as well. One of the EFL's new boys, SIGN United. Now, Sutton have played one game less than most of the division, only 3 matches on the board so far for them this season in the fourth tier, drawn 2 and lost 1. They played both Salford City and Forest Green Rovers in those opening games, 2 of the sort of pre-season promotion favourites really in League Two. Ned, what have you made of Sutton so far? Obviously in the EFL, really excited to be there, and there's surely no reason why they can't emulate the likes of Harrogate and Barrow, who came up last season and obviously established himself in the League Two.
Yeah, definitely. Say, played Salford and Forest Green, I think if you'd have offered them a point from those 2 games ahead of the season, they would have taken it. And I do think, 2 points from their first 3 games, it's not the ideal start, but it's a solid one. And I think they've shown that they're more than just here for a little run around in the EFL, that they clearly want to stick it out. And I think it's, things are only going to get better for them, given, that they've had to be away from home due to the sort of pitch being relayed. I think it was 3G or something before, and now it needs to be grass. And having that back as things sort of settle more, I think what we've seen is there's no reason why they can't emulate the likes of Barrow and Harrogate and stay up this term.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for Sutton. I mean, got a little bit of interest in them myself. Enzo Baudouin has obviously not been starting every game there, but got himself an assist recently. Former Crawley player, and that's where I live. So there's a very, very spurious link there. I see Ed looking at me through squinted eyes, not really buying it, which is fair enough. Right, we'll bring this EFL roundup to an end once we've gone through this weekend's games involving the EFL sides in London. I'll start with the Championship, and Ned, you're at QPR v Coventry this weekend. That should be a good game, actually, between 2 teams that started pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to this one. And I think, as you say, Coventry started the season really well, as have the R's, and I guess maybe Coventry taking a few people by surprise, but they're well deserving their 9 points so far. That said, a trip to the Kieran Prince Foundation Stadium against Mark Warburton's side really has got to be the toughest test of their season so far, and I'd certainly have the R's favourite, as long as Warburton was only able to name 4 subs in the week due to illness and sort of injury. As long as his team is sort of back and fully ready, which I suspect they will be, then I think you've got to have the R's as favourites. But Coventry, not a team that, as we've seen, as the likes of Chris Hughton and co, sort of vouch for, not someone you want to underestimate.
Your score prediction for that one, Ed?
I think it's going to be 3-1 QPR.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go 3-2. Billy?
I'm going to go 2-1.
Okay, so we're all going QPR win. Try and keep it London-centric, I suppose. Let's move on to Fulham against Stoke. I'm going to be there at the Cottage this weekend. Another good game against 2 teams that started really well. Obviously, Fulham flying high, but Stoke potentially one of the dark horses for the playoffs this season at least. They'll potentially be hoping for something even better. But obviously, Marco O'Neill's done some good business there. But a really big test for them, obviously, against Fulham, who are very much living up to the billing as pre-season, or one of the pre-season favourites for Championship promotion. I'm going to go for an open game. I won't go 3-2 because I've already gone for that one at QPR. So I'll go 4-2 to the Cottagers. Ned, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I started strongly. A home win for me, though. 2-0 Fulham.
Okay, and Billy?
I'm going to go 2-1 again to the home side. I think Stoke have that very young defence, and as well as they do look, it might be bit too tough of a test for them on Saturday.
Okay, we will see how they get on, and we'll just rattle through the other 5 games that none of us are attending, but hopefully plenty of fans will be. Millwall v Blackpool at the New Den. I'll go for a 1-1 draw there. Ned, how do you see this one going?
I reckon 0-0 draw.
Okay, Billy?
1-0 as well.
Okay, another draw for Millwall. They won't be too pleased about that after the way last season went as well. Charlton against Crewe at the Valley. I'm going to back Charlton to get their first win of the season, 1-0. Ned, how do you see this one going?
2-0 Charlton.
Okay, Billy?
3-1 Charlton.
Okay, that's confident. I like that. AFC Wimbledon are away at Ipswich Town, a big test, even if the Tractor Boys have started a little bit slowly. Obviously got a lot of quality in their team. I fancy the Dons maybe to get a draw though. I'm going to go with 2-2. Ned?
I am actually also going to go with 2-2.
Okay, fair enough. Never a bad idea copying me. Billy, how do you see this one going?
I'm going to go back to my 2-1 prediction, but to Ipswich. I think they'll finally kick into gear this week.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have to eventually. And just dropping into League Two as well. Leyton Orient host Bradford, who have started really well. Sort of fancy the Bantams actually to get an narrow win here. So we'll go 2-1. Ned, how do you see this one going?
1-0 Bradford. I fancy Gary Bowes' team just to nick this one.
Okay, and Billy?
I'll go with 1-1.
Okay. And finally, Sutton United home to Oldham. I'll go for 1-0 Sutton win. Ned, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, 2-0 Sutton's first win in the EFL.
And Billy, do you back that too?
Yeah, I'm going for a Sutton win as well. I'll go for 1-0.
All right, great. Well, now everyone knows what to lump on and what to avoid. Now we've given our predictions. Speaking of that, the next FLW TV program will be the betting show, 10 a.m. Friday. Catch us if you can. I'll be there with a couple of other Football League World team members. But for the London Roundup show, that's it for this week. We'll be back next Thursday. Thanks, Billy and Ned, for joining me. Thank you, everyone else, for watching and sticking with us to the end. And we'll catch you next week.